Hello and welcome, everyone, to Good Old Rocky Talk, a Vol Society podcast. I'm your host, Brad, here with my partners, the Davids. We're glad you're listening wherever you are. This is Good Old Rocky Talk. Welcome, Vol fans, to another episode of Good Old Rocky Talk. We just came off a bye week. We are all rested. The bod is feeling great and is ready to go for this Saturday's game against the LSU Tigers. Hello, everyone. This is your host and founder of Vol Society, Brad Frank, here with my partners, David Dees and David Morrison. How we doing, guys?
Doing good, Brad. How are you, man?
I can't complain. I'm rested.
Yeah, it was a good bye week, wasn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. Great weather. Fall is here.
It's nice to have a bye week where we weren't stressing over something.
Oh, the bod rested. Yeah, I didn't have stress this past weekend. I feel good. So I'm ready to rock and roll, baby. We have another great week. A big game coming up. LSU Tigers. It's not going to be easy. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But it's good to be back for another episode with you guys. And listen, hey, we have a great show lined up today, including our first guest on our podcast. That's right, our first guest. He's a dear friend of mine, actually all of ours, dating back all the way from elementary school. He's a diehard Tennessee fan and a person who does really quite a bit for the Knoxville community. He's a fantastic person. Proud to call him our friend. But more on our guest in just a minute. But for now, let's jump into the first segment, guys. Let's start with the Tennessee notes coming out of our bye week. I'll let David Dees take this one. Take it away, buddy.
Yeah, it was a bye week. Coming off the big emotional win over Florida, Tennessee gets a well-needed week off of rest. Obviously, trying to nurse some injuries and get some guys healthier for this upcoming trip to Baton Rouge. A couple of things coming out of Josh Heupel's press conference this Monday. He did confirm that Cedric Tillman had surgery on his ankle, a tightrope surgery, which is basically like a scope. And typically you hear surgery and you think, oh gosh, the guy's going to be out for months. This is a new, less invasive type of surgery that is becoming more and more common in sports, to where they go in and repair some things on the ankle that are supposed to help him heal quicker. And so there's a chance that Cedric Tillman could play against LSU. Everybody that I hear pretty much says it's probably a coin toss whether he actually plays this week. Alabama is much more likely next week, but we'll see how the coaching staff decides to play that one. Another note coming out of Josh Heupel's press conference: unfortunately, Warren Burrell out for the season. He had a season-ending surgery this past week, so he will not be rejoining the Vols in 2022. Another note, on a positive note, D. Williams is playing. He's making his debut this Saturday against LSU. D. Williams, if you've not heard of him or are not familiar with him yet, he's a JUCO transfer. This is his first year in the program. They expect big things out of him. He was a really well thought of player back in fall camp, and he was going to get a chance at returning punts. He also is a cornerback, so he is a player at two spots of need for Tennessee. They really would like to have him return punts in an area that's obviously been well documented and so far this season. And then also you got him in a secondary that just lost Warren Burrell for the season. If nothing more than just adding depth, he's going to be a welcome addition. Now, if he can come in and actually do what they think he can, there's a chance he could become a starter in that defensive backfield, and as he gets more comfortable in the defense and gets his legs back under him, maybe he's a player that could really meet a need and be a pleasant surprise this second half of the season. Also, I know Hendon Hooker's been nursing a shoulder injury. He's going to play against LSU. It was a non-throwing injury with his shoulder, non-throwing shoulder. Got banged up in the Florida game, so it was a good week for him to be able to rest and have off. And a couple of other notes this week against LSU is just announced. Tennessee's going to be wearing the smoky gray jerseys on the road, so they will go with an alternate uni on the road in Baton Rouge. And I say I'm not a gray guy. You guys know that. But if they're going to wear them outside of Neyland. So this would be a good week to do it. And then the big one, if Tennessee, whether Tennessee beats LSU or not, the third Saturday in October is always a big one, and that one has now been announced officially as a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. So it'll be Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on the call for that one, and a lot to look forward to. Let's do this one Saturday. It's going to be fun, but that Bama game looming is going to be a special one as well.
Thank you, Dees. David Morrison, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, D's hit most of the big points, talked about just great to hear D. Williams coming back, especially with the announcement of Warren Burrell out for the rest of the year. That adds some help to a secondary that desperately needs to play their best game on Saturday. Cedric Tillman, hearing that he could play against LSU. If not, definitely, hopefully he'll be ready by the Alabama game. As far as wide receiver depth goes, I have no issue so far. I mean, they played great, without Cedric Tillman. We mentioned it on the previous podcast, with Ramel Keaton and Brew McCoy and Jalen Hyatt. So I expect some big things from them, even if Tillman doesn't go. But if he does, obviously we're going to welcome him back, and we'll see how much do they go to him right away, especially coming off of that surgery. Um, the 11 o'clock local time kickoff for this LSU game. Um, it's good for us because you don't have that crazy Baton Rouge atmosphere, but it's still going to be a jam packed place. The fans are still going to be loud, and it's going to be a tough environment.
You don't think they'll be drinking already and be drunk and eating that gumbo by 11 a.m., Morrison? Come on now.
Well,
I
think they'll probably be somewhat sober, but but it'll still be it's still going to be kind of.
I agree with you, buddy. It works in our favor big time. I'm so glad we don't have that night game.
Yeah. I mean, calling Baton Rouge may be a little bit sleepy coming on Saturday morning, but no, I mean it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how LSU responds to that. I mean, last time they had a noon game was last year against Florida, and they ended up getting the win. Now, granted, Florida was going through shambles at that time with Dan Mullen as their head coach, and we're a lot better program than when that Florida team showed up. But yeah, it's going to be definitely a very interesting game on Saturday. As far as I like it being a morning game, obviously, and plus, as Tennessee fans, you get your game out of the way, and kind of the anxiety throughout the day or going into the evening. I'm all for that. Just get it out of the way, and hopefully have a good day, or maybe not so much of a good day.
A couple of things I'll add to that point about the early kickoff. I was telling Brad earlier. He's thinking about last year in Tennessee's noon games. They played at noon at home against Pittsburgh last year. They played at noon on the road at Missouri. They played at noon against South Carolina. There might have been one or two more, but those are the ones that I remember. And I thought those were three of the better games they had all year. I know the Pittsburgh game ended in a loss, but that had its own set of issues with Joe Milton going down at quarterback and Hendon Hooker coming in on the fly. But I thought we played really well in noon kickoffs last year. I'm hoping that continues over this year. I know the team practices at 11 a.m., so they're used to being up early. If you ask the guys on the team, they'd tell you they want to play early. The earlier, the better. And so, I think this definitely works in our favor, uh, and a huge break getting to play that early on the road at LSU.
Yep.
Oh, and also Dylan Sampson. He's a Baton Rouge kid, and the bye week was important to him, hopefully, as well. He was banged up in the Florida game, didn't go. Excuse me, he's banged up in the Akron game, didn't get to go against Florida. So he's been out for a couple of weeks now. And hopefully they can get him back and get him reinserted into this backfield this week. They're going to need him this week. His speed, his talent. I think he's a guy that can definitely make plays for Tennessee, and it's a homecoming for him. So hopefully Dylan Sampson can play and is feeling better and has a good game against LSU.
Hey, what did we learn last week in college football? Let's go to that next segment. I love doing this. I'll tell you what I learned last week. You guys chime in when you want to. Let's talk about it a little bit. A lot of good games on last week. A lot of interesting games, I should say. Interesting scores. I guess first we could talk about Kentucky. They finally take a loss to Ole Miss, 22-19 in a close game. What a game that was.
Hopefully the Will Levis number one draft pick conversation will stop for a little bit.
You would think so. But who knows? But Kentucky takes the L. All right. What else can we talk about? Hey, Kansas State. My goodness. On a run. Beating Texas Tech 37-28. Interesting. Good for them. Oklahoma struggling. Losing to TCU. Oklahoma. What do you guys think about that? What's going on with Oklahoma?
I think just Brent Venables being a rookie coach, he's coaching some big games when he was at Clemson, but, he only called the shots on defense, and, Dabo did most of the game management adjustments, and now he's the one that's got to make those calls. He's going to be fine at Oklahoma. It's just I think we put a lot of hype on this team for them maybe win the Big 12. And especially the Big 12 is just wide open. There's so many good teams that can end up winning it. It's just a first year head coach and learning what to do and what not to do. And, I think they'll be fine at the end of the year.
All right, cool. What do you think, David Dees?
I don't have many thoughts on Oklahoma. They've obviously been a disappointment. It's a first-year head coach. They lost a lot of players to the portal after the coaching change. So that's just a weird year for them. Mm-hmm. Another game for me from last week, you just continue to see just an awful offense out of Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher's offense is just not working. And so to me, that was the story of the week. Here, they just come off a big emotional win over Arkansas. They got lucky and won that one with the field goal kick there at the end that bounced out. I just feel like this Texas A&M team has so much talent. To see them struggle that way on offense has been very, very surprising. And I think they're going to get it handed to them this week against Alabama. It doesn't get any easier for Jimbo and the Aggies. So I just really was surprised at how bad they were again for the, second out of last 3 weekends.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, they're really struggling. It's not good. It's not good at all. And I agree. I think Alabama lays it to them, buddy. They're going to lay it to them. Hey, Oklahoma State, shout out, right? They continue to rise in the rankings. And what are they now? Number 7 in the AP. I mean, that's good for them.
Yeah, big road win at Baylor this past week for them.
No question.
Mike Gundy continues to overachieve.
Oh, no question. And then my last 2 comments that I want to talk about, guys. This is really interesting, and I may be overthinking this, but I feel like something's happening here. I don't know what it is, but my first thing is Georgia. I just continue to be shocked by this. They were the number 1 team. I think they're 2 now. Alabama's number 1 now. And don't get me wrong, a fantastic team. They got great players. They're incredible. But the past couple of weeks, it's a different team I'm looking at. They barely beat Kent State last week. And then we have to be real here. Did you see the Missouri game? Missouri's not any good. Missouri was winning this game, and they barely beat Missouri 26-22. I mean, it's good for us. Obviously, I love this. You know, I hope they continue this. But what's
And
going on?
Kirby Smart came out after the game and said Missouri just their defensive line punched them in the mouth. They weren't ready for it. I just think
Wow.
Georgia's not been up for the last couple of weeks. They've been sleepwalking, and they've got enough talent to get past teams like that doing it. But as their schedule gets tougher and harder, they can't get away with too many more performances like that, I'd imagine. And I know they've got a lot of wide receivers that are injured. I think
Yeah.
they've had a hard time stretching the field. They're having to rely on their running game, which you would think would be a strength, but I guess they've become a little more one dimensional. Stetson Bennett didn't play well against Missouri, and you got to take your hat off to Missouri. I mean, you look at that team that we saw last year when Tennessee just dismantled them from start to finish. Uh, Clearly, a very different defensive effort this past week.
Sure. No, I agree with that. But for me, it's just, when you're the number one team in the country and
You want to dominate teams
and
instead
you
of
are
just sweep.
struggling. Yeah, Morrison, exactly.
Yeah.
I could not believe when I got a text saying, I don't know who it was from. It might have been you, Morris. I don't know who it was, or D's, or somebody said, "Are you seeing this?" And I turned it on. I'm like, what? Missouri's beating Georgia?
Yeah, I was at my parents' house. We were watching LSU and Auburn, and we're thinking, man, Auburn's going to pull this big upset. And then we're seeing the cut-ins to Georgia, Missouri, and I was like, this is a bigger deal right here. And we kind of somewhat made the right decision up until the fourth quarter. But yeah, it was just kind of mind-boggling that just Missouri was just outmanning Georgia throughout up until the fourth quarter, and then they just ran out of gas at the end. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what to think of. It's just interesting. I mean,
yeah, and they play, and I just pulled up the schedule for next week. Georgia is a 29.5 point favorite. They play Auburn at home this week, and I don't know, Auburn. I don't see Georgia really beating them by 29 points if they continue to put up those numbers the last couple of weeks. But we'll
no,
see.
I don't see that at all. If they play like they did the past 2 weeks, I don't think that's happening. I really don't. So I don't know
Right.
what's happening there, but we'll find out. Anyways,
I want to give some shout out to some teams, outside of the SEC bubble. You mentioned Kansas State earlier. We got to give a shout out to the Kansas Jayhawks. They are 5-0 on the year. Had a huge win against Iowa State
yeah.
this past Saturday. They got a huge home game against TCU, who's undefeated themselves at number 17 in the country. Sonny Dykes, the former SMU head coach, took over at TCU, doing a great job, and they upset at Oklahoma. They stomped Oklahoma at home Saturday, so that's a big time Big 12 game coming up. And then I'm gonna give a shout out to Chip Kelly and UCLA. They had a nice win late Friday night against Washington. They're 5-0 on the year, and they got a big time showdown with Utah. And the last time we kind of saw Utah in a big time game, they lost to Florida. So here's a shot for Kyle Whittingham to get Utah back into that Pac-12 front. But maybe Chip Kelly has a team going, and could be a very interesting battle of LA towards the end of the year between USC and UCLA.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. And, just final thoughts here talking about last week and just so far what we've seen going on throughout the season so far this year with all these different teams. This is me personally, but I got to tell you guys, I I understand the process, okay? I understand you got to go and you got to go out there and you got to play one game at a time. I understand that. I'm not trying to look ahead, but what I'm seeing here and this is crazy, I know, but like the way Georgia's been playing lately and some of the close games Alabama's played lately. I mean, it's been a crazy season so far and I continue just to feel like Tennessee can play with any team on their schedule this year. Now, I'm not saying we're going to win them all, but am I crazy to think that, hey, we can play 4 quarters with everyone on our schedule this year, including Bama and Georgia. Am I crazy in saying that?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think we can and should play with everybody on the schedule. Now, are you saying we should beat all of them? No, but should you be in the game in the fourth quarter? Yeah, I think so. I think
And
Josh
isn't that
Heupel has proven.
exciting?
Yeah,
Isn't
it
that
is
exciting?
exciting. Heck yeah, it's been years since we've been able to say that.
Yeah. Gosh. Wow.
Kind of a final thought, changing subjects. We I talked about on my what I learned over the weekend a couple weeks ago about coaches on the hot seat. Have you guys ever remember coaches just being fired this early on in the season? I mean, yesterday, we of course recording on Monday night. Uh, Colorado fired Carl Durrell, and then Wisconsin surprisingly fired their head coach Paul Chris. I mean, you talk about what 5 coaches in 4 weeks just fired, not even into October. I mean, you know, I kind of wonder from you guys, do you think this is going to be a trend in the future in college football,
Yeah.
or is it just kind of a wacky year all of a sudden?
I just think it's a different time, man. I think we're in a different time. Football's different, and the same goes for coaching and what's expected. And do I think it's fair? No, I mean, a part of me says you couldn't pay me to be a coach, but then you see how much they get paid, and it's like, yeah, you could pay me to be a coach. You can fire me after 1 year. That's fine. I'll take my money and run. But the expectations now are just outrageous. And if bottom line, I think we're just in it's a different game today, coaches included. So I think this is kind of the norm going forward. I don't know, David Dees, what do you think?
Yeah, hard to feel sorry for any of these guys when you talk about their buyouts and how much money they're getting just to not coach and sit at home. You look at Auburn. Once they fire Brian Harsin, whenever that happens, it's going to happen at some point. Whether they do it in the middle of the season or wait till the end of the season, they'll be paying out $40 million in buyout money between him and Gus Malzahn, just between those two guys, and that's in 2 years.
Unreal.
It's unbelievable. And you had Scott Frost fired 2 weeks ago. So it does seem like it keeps creeping up earlier and earlier into the season that they're canning these guys. And I don't know if it's motivated by money. I don't know if it's motivated by the transfer portal and NIL, and they're trying to get their ducks in a row and go ahead and line up the next coach that they want to bring in. I don't know what the strategy is in it, but
But what does that tell you?
it definitely seems to be a trend and I
Yeah.
don't know why it would stop at this point. It's just going to
No,
probably keep happening. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, what does that tell you when all these, organizations are doing this, even though they're having to buy out and pay millions for a guy who's not even coaching anymore at the university? I mean, that should tell you something. I mean, they obviously don't care about
They've got
they
so
don't
much
care
money
about
coming
spending
in.
the money,
Yeah.
right?
You,
They've got so much money coming in, and they've got huge boosters that have deep pockets, and
yep.
there's power struggles at these universities. There's factions of boosters at
Exactly.
Auburn right now that want to compete for control, and we've seen it here in the past with some of Tennessee's boosters and some of the behind the scene politics of you know who is in whose camp and who should fire who and when they should fire it and who gets to make the hire. And yeah, it's just when you got a lot of money in something, the stakes are high and there's a lot of egos involved. So, it is what it is, but at least these guys are getting paid well to leave.
That's the thing. It's like the way you have to look at it, it's really interesting. You'll see if you ever follow like different posts and all that good stuff when like someone's fired, like Scott Frost, you'll see a variety of people. You'll see two different kinds of people. Like good, it's about time, blah blah blah, and then you'll say, "Oh man, I feel so sorry for him." But man, it's hard to feel sorry for some of these guys when when you look at the amount of money.
We're never going to see that much money in our lifetimes.
It's ridiculous to coach a team. It's gotten out of control.
Yeah.
That's not up for me to decide here and say, but I can give you my opinion, but it's really out of control what these guys get paid today.
even the coordinators now are making at least $1 million in the Power Five conferences. And
It's
then
unbelievable.
the ones I feel sorry for are the support staffs that are out of jobs, the people that are on the lower end of the
Yeah.
financial pole, some of your people that are coaching running backs, and they're making maybe a couple $100,000 a year. Losing a job for them is a big deal, but these other guys are getting paid millions of dollars just to not coach. And so for those guys, I don't feel sorry for you, and I'm glad that players are now getting paid, because if you got enough money to send a guy out the door for doing a poor job and you give him
Yes.
$20 million, then why the heck shouldn't Tennessee be able to offer a quarterback money to come in here and play millions of dollars? It's just, it is what it is. I'm glad the players are finally getting included and getting in on it.
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
And don't be surprised if Josh Heupel gets an extension at the end of the year or add years to his contract, because there's going to be a lot of programs going to be calling Danny White and Josh Heupel. I'm not trying to scare Tennessee fans. I'm just telling you, we're 4
Yeah.
and 0, and you got a young head coach that's got an exciting offense and got a program on fire. So yeah, don't be surprised to see another contract extension at the end of the year.
Yeah. And that's, and
What did they
people
give him the other week? Did they give him a raise or an extension or both?
a raise,
$1 million raise.
Okay.
$1 million raise. And also his staff
There you go.
Got
as
a
well
raise.
got a raise as well.
And that's key right there.
Yes.
That keeps your team chemistry, and that keeps, your staff could just wander off to wherever.
Yes.
You want to see. I want to see Alex Gullidge and Tim Banks. If that's where they want to go in a head coaching role, I'm not going to hold them back, and achieve what you
Yes.
want. But it keeps your staff intact, and it keeps that team
Well,
chemistry.
Yeah. And, we had a lot of comments on Vol Society on our Facebook page, when this happened, when we broke the news. A lot of people were, either excited about it, or we had a lot of people saying, how could you give a guy a raise right now? It's ridiculous. But as I mentioned, guys, you need to just trust Danny White and what he's doing there, buddy, because I'm going to tell you right now, no offense, but he's a little bit smarter in this aspect than you and me, period. He's keeping a guy, he's putting this to rest right now so that we can focus on other things, right?
And he knows these calls are coming.
There's no question about that. And if Heupel ends up winning 9, 10, whatever ball games he can get this year, if we can go 10-2 this year, I'm going to tell you there's going to be people wanting him. I mean, I know there's people wanting him. And Danny White's doing what he has to do to keep him here and his staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, Morrison. If we win 9, 10 games or whatever, which I think we will, hey, give him an extension.
And I don't think, just for the record, I don't think Josh Heupel necessarily wants to go anywhere. I think he really enjoys being here. I think he appreciates Tennessee. I think he's starting to see what this place can become when football's back and when we're winning. It's hard to replicate this. I don't think you can replicate this anywhere else. And Tennessee has the money to keep him around if they need to. So I don't think he's going anywhere. It's a good problem to have, right? It means we're winning football games.
Agree. And I also agree with your statement about Heupel. I think he's very happy here. And I don't think he has any intentions on going anywhere. But what Danny White's doing is strictly business. And quite frankly, it's very smart of him. Period.
We had a chance to lose Vitello, a couple of years ago. And I just think Danny White knows his staff, knows his coaches very well, and I think they want to work for him. They want Danny White to be their boss.
Oh God, if you want to talk about one coach who I know is extremely happy to be here and not interested in going anywhere else, it's Tony Vitello. I can honestly say that. This guy loves where he's at. Okay.
It's because the fan support here is unlike any other.
Yes.
When you go through the hell that we went through for the last 15 years in football, we've never seen any really long-term success in basketball, never been to a Final Four. We're still top 5 in the country every year in attendance for basketball. You have a baseball program that never existed, really. I mean, they had some success back in the Rod Delmonico era, but other than that, You look at the fan support for Tony Vitello's team, for the Lady Vols, for football, basketball. It's just the fans here are fantastic, and they put up with a lot of crap, and they're still loyal, and they still show up, and they still spend money, and they still buy merchandise, and the whole thing. So Tennessee fans are the reason why they tried to kill this program and they couldn't do it, and it's because of the Tennessee fans.
Amen.
And there's a bunch of country songs about Tennessee athletics out there, which is quite funny.
Yeah, there are.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, you do. Awesome. Anything else we need to talk about this past week in college football? Morrison?
No, I think we covered it all. Like I said, just another busy Saturday coming up this week. With our game and LSU and some good top 25 matches coming along. Excited. Gonna be another
Yeah,
chaotic
definitely.
Saturday.
Let's go.
Let's go indeed.
All right, let's move on to our next segment. I mentioned it earlier on the podcast, but I now want to introduce you to our guest on the show. He's a dear friend of ours who is heavily involved in the Knoxville community and like us, a Tennessee fan, Ryan Hughes. Just a little bit about Ryan Hughes real quick, if I may. Ryan, over the past 6.5 years, has served as the executive director of the Tennessee Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs and the Boys and Girls Clubs in Tennessee, two statewide organizations that work to benefit the 119 local club sites located within Tennessee. The two organizations together provide statewide advocacy, fundraising, professional development, and grant management for clubs based in Tennessee. Now, during his time with the Boys and Girls Clubs, Ryan has led a team that has grown revenue, now get this, by more than 700%. You heard me right, 700%. From roughly $2.5 million in 2017 to over $18.1 million in 2021. I think this guy knows what he's doing. That is fantastic. In 2018, Ryan was named the 2018 National Alliance Professional of the Year for the United States by the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And in 2020, the Tennessee Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs was named the 2020 State Alliance of the Year. Prior to working for the Boys and Girls Clubs, he spent time working as a consultant in the administration of the former governor of Tennessee, for a former congressman, and a former United States senator. Ryan and his wife Sarah live in Knoxville, Tennessee currently with their 3 children, Jack, Caroline, and Ben, where they are very active in the community and Church Street United Methodist Church. Wow. What a resume. Ryan, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And by the way, Ryan is our first guest here on Good Old Rocky Talk, and we're happy to have you here, buddy. So just a little background about Ryan. We've known this guy for a long time. One of the reasons we brought him on here, so me and the Davids here, you guys know this by now, but we go way back since childhood. Well, the same goes with Ryan Hughes. We were actually just talking about this in the studio here before we got started, just talking about some stories about our elementary days. And I got to tell you, man, Ryan's always been a solid guy, a really good person, and has always been wanting to do the right thing, especially in the community. So who better than to have than Ryan Hughes, a person in Knoxville just doing great things out there. And by the way, a huge volunteer fan. So we're glad you're here, Ryan.
Absolutely.
So Ryan, just real quick, how, I know that for a while, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were living for a while out in Nashville for a while with the family. And then you somehow made your way back close to home You're now in Knoxville, Tennessee, and as we just talked about, you've been doing this role here for 6.5 years in Knoxville. How did that all come about, and what brought you back to Knoxville? Really, was it the job? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Nashville's a wonderful place, fun place, to go see the Preds, go see the Titans, a lot of live sporting events. But, my heart is in East Tennessee. And as much as I love this state, I love Knoxville and the surrounding area even more. Probably just growing up, just down the road, going to Tennessee games as a young person, with my family and friends, and getting back closer to family was nice. We lived also up in Johnson City prior to that. We love the mountains, we love hiking, the outdoors, and so we wanted that back in our life. And it just so happens that we also got a little bit closer to Neyland as well.
So let's move in a little bit. Let's talk about you and Tennessee Vols and how this all came about. All right, if we can. Now, Ryan, first of all, have you always been a Tennessee Volunteer fan? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. David Dees and I were talking about this earlier today. We feel like, and we may be wrong on this, that your parents went to different schools, right? And they're not Tennessee fans, right? They may be, but that's not their number one school. So, am I wrong on that? And
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so my mom is from Oklahoma originally. Her parents are big Sooner fans, and my dad's from Mississippi Delta and went to Delta State and the Mississippi State. So he's a huge Mississippi State Bulldogs fan and definitely riding on high after this last weekend, taking down the Texas A&M Aggies. But
yeah,
really early on, man, I think Dad took me to a game when I was 4 or 5, and what I remember about Neyland and being so loud, there was a kickoff return, and it was like you could feel the hair standing up on the back of your neck. It just reverberated and was so
mm,
loud in that place. And I was like, I love this. This is my team, And so from that point
wow.
on, I was a Tennessee Vol.
Well, you answered my first question. That was going to be, when did you know that you became a Tennessee Vol? So you were saying that basically around the age of 4 or 5, when your dad took you, right then and there, you just felt that environment and the chills and the crowd, and you knew right then, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and I would add, Brad, I remember that. I remember more succinctly, Schuler, that era, of really starting to kind of put things together and really start having favorite players and that sort of thing. And the other thing that I
Yeah,
think, and I think that you'll agree with this, one of the other most memorable moments was actually in 2019, not that long ago. I took my son to his first game, Jack, who is now 6.
that's awesome.
And I took him so he's born on November 28th. My birthday's the 29th. So we typically play Vanderbilt, around that time period. And I got him a Tennessee Vols jersey. We went to the game, and he absolutely loved it. And I was really that's always going to stick with me as that moment of kind of passing the torch down.
That is fantastic. So Ryan, that's one thing that I have not been able to do yet. I have a son who's not quite old enough yet. I don't feel comfortable enough taking him to that crazy environment yet, but it's coming soon. He's in kindergarten now, and I'm getting ready to hopefully in the next year or so take him to a game. But I do know that David Dees can speak on that. He is. We've had really good talks about this in the past when he took his son to his first game, and he said the same thing. And I'm telling you, every Vol fan listening out there right now, I guarantee you, who has kids, can relate to this because David D said the exact wording. Said it's a day he'll never forget. Am I right, David D's?
Oh yeah, it meant as much to me as it did my 9-year-old. But he just seeing him light up. Actually, he was probably 7 at that time. I took him to the South Carolina game. It was the year before COVID, so I guess 2019 season,
Yeah,
and we won there. Jawan Jennings had a big game, and yeah, we got to take in the Vol Walk and the whole pregame stuff, and yeah, just it was awesome. Day I'll never forget, and a day he won't forget either. So I can definitely relate to that, Ryan.
Well, and one of the things that we get to do at the Boys and Girls Clubs, we work, with clubs all across the state, but one of our clubs based in Knoxville, that serves kids. What we take for granted many times as Vol fans is that we get to go to games. There's a lot of kids that live just miles away from Neyland and never get a chance. And we're fortunate to be able to get tickets donated and get kids up there and get them around that experience. And that's a huge blessing as well.
Wow. That's really awesome. See, I didn't know that. So you're telling me what you guys do there, a part of what you guys do in particular with the Tennessee, atmosphere at sporting UT events. You guys are able to get tickets for kids that aren't able to really go to these games and provide them just a memorable experience. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and we're really fortunate too to have some really good partners and individuals who make that happen. And I know we're talking about Tennessee, but we also have a really good partnership with the Nashville Predators. They do that as well at one of our statewide events, and just can't say thanks enough to the individuals and organizations that help make that happen.
Let me ask you a question, Ryan. What if individuals such as just standard regular individuals such as myself had tickets to Tennessee game and I can't go, is there a way if somebody was like me and they said, "You know what? I want to do something good. I want to donate these tickets to a group out there that could, give these tickets to kids where they could go and have a great experience." Is that something they could do with your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they could reach out to us, www.bgctn.org, and we would connect them. If they live, let's just say, out of state, we can connect them to the local club in Knoxville. But if they live in Sevierville, there's a local organization over there we could connect them with, and they could just drop them by their offices, and they could get them to a family who would like to experience that, that are club members. So, or Jefferson County, or wherever the case may be, we can get them connected to the right folks.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So now, guys, everyone listening here, if you're looking to do a really good thing, you need to do this. Now I'm going to do this. Now that I know, I'm certainly going to do it. When I have tickets and I can't go, I'm going to reach out. Ryan, give me that website one more time in case people didn't get that.
Yeah, www.bgctn.org. That's our statewide website. They can just drop us a line there, and we can get them connected to their local closest club or to the Knoxville organization, and those tickets will be used.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Let's go back to some more questions for our guest today. Ryan, I got a question for you, buddy. So you've been, let me ask you this. How often do you go to games now? Would you say you go maybe once or twice a year, or do you go more than that?
Yeah, a couple games a year. Having three kids, I'd love to get to more, but the weekends are a priority to spend with them, and so sometimes I don't always get to a game, but we are always watching, and one or two games a year.
Out of all the games you've been to, starting at, what'd you say, 4 or 5 years of age, your most memorable game in Neyland Stadium? I'm putting you on the spot. Go.
Man, I would say that's really tough to nail it down to one game. I would say, anytime that I'm in Neyland and we can whip up on Florida, that's great, but that hasn't happened a ton, right? And I know some
Yeah.
of y'all went to that game, and I'm definitely very jealous of that. And I heard, from a lot of my friends who were there, it was an electric atmosphere. We've been on the short end of the stick in some really big key moments. Thinking of Oklahoma, that was an electric
Yeah.
environment, one that I would put up there had we won it. But really going back probably earlier than that, you know, um, it turned out to not be that close. But I remember going when we had Kentucky at home. They had Tim Couch. We had Peyton Manning, and it was supposed to be this big
Mm.
shootout of an event against, arguably two of the best quarterbacks in the country. that's definitely up there. Even though the final score didn't totally reflect it, if I'm remembering correctly. But that was a really big one. Um, Man, it's
Yeah.
so hard to pick just one though.
Yeah. I hear you. No, that Kentucky game, I forgot about that one. Yeah. Morrison, what was the score of that game? Do you remember? You're good at this stuff. Any idea?
It was, what was it, 90, 96, 97?
Uh,
Sounds
that's
about
about
right.
right.
Was it, was that weird low scoring game like 17-14, or is that, or I'm thinking of Andy? As I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, and that may have been like the Cutler
Okay.
game or whatever. But yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on that one. You stumped me on that one, Brad.
Look at that. It's not every day you get to stump Morrison, buddy. This guy is a stats genius when it comes to Tennessee sports.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a long time ago, David. So I'm not going to
But
hold that one against you, buddy.
let me Google it here while y'all
Find it out,
discuss.
Morrison. But yeah, Ryan, that's a great game. I remember that one.
Well, I would say some of my favorite players, just real quick, Peerless Price was definitely up there. Love T. Martin, love Peyton.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the typicals. But I really liked, Kelly Washington. I really liked Whitten, all those there for a year.
Yeah.
Will Overstreet lives in my neighborhood, so I get to see him from time to time.
No kidding.
And yeah, yeah. Juwan Jennings in more recent years, just what a great player. Played with so much passion. Man, we've had so many great, Eric Berry, so many great players that have come through. Jamal Lewis. I remember meeting that dude, and I could almost, I was a fairly young kid, could almost look him in the eye, but goodness gracious, he weighed twice as much as I did, pure muscle. Just cool, just awesome players like that.
If there's one person that's really just embodied the whole like UT spirit here, it's you. And when I say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard this. I'm pretty sure like you're in a house now that is a famous home of a famous Tennessean. Yes or no?
That is correct. Yeah. My wife and I were fortunate to buy a home. Dr. Julian, who led the band at UT for 30 plus
Unreal.
years,
True
as
legend.
you know, yeah, created the Power T formation circle drill, picked out Rocky Top as our fight song. I mean, just a few small things that he contributed to the volunteer.
You hear that,
tradition.
guys? Not to cut you off, Ryan. I just want to make sure our fans just heard that right. Dr. Julian, you're learning something today, guys. If you're listening to the podcast and you don't know this, because I'm a huge band guy, love the music. There is no Rocky Top. There is no Power T formation. There is no Vol Walk marching down the band, the traditions that we love so much. There is none of that without Dr. Julian. He's the creator of that. And Ryan Hughes is in that guy's home now. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool deal. And we plan on just staying in this house forever and getting to pass that on to somebody else someday. But what an incredible individual. His wife also taught at UT. Just really great people.
Yeah.
I didn't have the fortune of really knowing them that well, but know their son and just what he contributed to University of Tennessee is pretty remarkable and awesome.
No question about it. No question about it. Well, Ryan, let's real quick, let's talk about this season so far. What are your thoughts so far? Here we are. What are we? 4-0 right now? We had a bye week. We had a bye week last week. So we're 4-0 under Josh Heupel, second year here. What are your thoughts so far in the season?
Well, I'll take just a second to answer this by saying this first. I don't think Josh Heupel and his coaching staff get enough credit for last year. I think they way overachieved in my view, particularly with how many people hit, the transfer market, how depleted they were. I mean, just phenomenal year in my opinion. And I think that's a sign of a good coach. I'll tell you, when he first came in, I thought, did he just ride the coattails of Scott Frost? I think a lot of people ask that question. The last year,
Yep.
I quickly said that was not the case. That was just simply not the case, because he really turned around this program in a big way and seems to be making all the right decisions. And I think you hear that from the locker room. And so I'll say this year, I think we're maybe slightly ahead of where I thought we would be. I thought potentially Pittsburgh or Florida might slip up and get us, but I wasn't sure. I didn't predict that we would lose either one of those games, but I thought there was a chance of that. I think, looking on paper at next week, LSU, they've had, one less fumble than we've had this year. We've had 8, they've had 7, I believe, if I got that correct. They've had interceptions, but only through their backup. And so really, I think that's going to be a huge teller of this next game, is the turnover battle. Does somebody make a mistake there or not? But this season, just in general, before you even get to next week, has been, I think, really, really good.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you mentioned last season, Ryan, because, we don't talk about this enough. But what he did last year, if you go back and look at what he came into, okay, which was a total disaster, by the way, okay, rock bottom, period. I don't know why a coach would want to take the job, but he did. And what he was able to do in year one, I'm telling you right now, I don't know of another coach that could do something like that. I haven't seen it, not that quickly. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good coaches out there, but under the circumstances, what he came into was a completely disgraceful program. And the guy had a winning season? My God, what more could you ask for? And here we are, 4-0 already, potentially 5-0 come Saturday afternoon. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Ryan. Ryan, now, here's something I like to do. I like to do this with everyone. All the Davids have done this. I've done this. We ask the fans all the time on our show, on our weekly Facebook show, this all the time. Just out of curiosity. Now, you've got a little bit of it's a little easier for you here, I would say, because we're already 4 games in. But what's your season prediction, man? Where do you think we end up?
Yeah, that is nice to already have those 4 under our belt, but I'll say, it's still difficult. I don't know that Georgia is what we all thought that they were, but they still have a heck of a lot of really good players. And you've got teams now that have got some players that are banged up that we're going to be facing over the next few weeks, but who knows if they'll be fully healthy by the time we see them. I think, at the beginning of the season, I was going to say, in all honesty, 8, 9 wins, 9 kind of being our max, 8 probably being more realistic. And I thought that would be a good step forward. But the way we're playing and the momentum we have on the team right now, I think maybe 9's the floor. I think 10 is a much bigger possibility. 10-win season, which is just insane for me to say to a certain degree based on where we were last year. But I think it's a reality.
So I found that score, Brad, that Ryan was talking about. So it was November 23rd, 1996. Tennessee smoked Kentucky 56-10.
Wow.
So that was the game. The next week that I was thinking of, that Vanderbilt game, Tennessee ended up winning that one 14-7. So that's the one I had mixed up. But yeah, that was the game that Ryan was at over 25 years ago. So
yeah, that was supposed to be
awesome.
A close game, battle of 2 strong quarterbacks,
right?
and we put it on them.
Yep.
Those were the good days.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that was great. Let's move on now to our next segment. And we're going to have Ryan stick around with us. Let's make this more fun. It's always just the 3 amigos on here. Let's add a 4th one and keep them on here and keep the party going. It's always good to have another person's feedback and their thoughts. And so we're going to have you join us, Ryan, if you're okay with it. And we're going to go to our mailbag section. Let's do it. And we only have, since we had a guest on today, we're only going to limit this to just a couple of questions since the show is going to be a little long today since we had a guest on. But Ryan, let's get your take on these as well. So here we are, mailbag section. We're going to go to our first question here, and this is from Freddie F. from New Market, Tennessee. New Market. Anybody know David Dees, David Morrison, Hughes? Where's New Market?
It's up in Jefferson County.
Jefferson County. All right. Thank you, Freddie, for joining us. So Freddie asked, how many players off this team, this current team, will be drafted after this season? Wow. I haven't even thought of that. Wow. I'll tell you what, David Morrison, what are your thoughts on this, man? Let's go with you first, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to count slow doing this. So obviously we gotta start with Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
I think Hendon Hooker is definitely gonna be drafted. Especially seeing how everybody's going gaga over Will Levis right now. He'll probably be a top overall draft pick, but I just don't see him calibrating in the NFL. You got to win, but we're not talking. This is not Kentucky podcast here. We're talking about Tennessee, so I'm not going to get on that soapbox. But yeah, Hendon Hooker, you got to go with him. Looking at the wide receivers, I'm trying to remember who's eligible. So if we're just going to go look into the future, I guess I think Brew McCoy's NFL ready. He's got the size. He's proven himself worthy of playing on Sunday. Same thing with Cedric Tillman. I know he's got the injury right now, but I think he's got the talent to play on Sundays also. I really like him. Byron Young on the defensive line. I think he's really came on, especially in that Florida game, did very well. I want to see him really develop in the second half of the season, but he's definitely got all the tools and traits. I'll even throw in Amari Thomas. Amari Thomas has got good size. There's a lot of NFL teams that's looking for D tackles. I think he can fit very well. I love to see Jeremy Banks get to the league. Don't know if he'll be a high draft pick, but I can definitely see somebody getting him in the late rounds. We'll see where he goes. I'll love for my Titans to get him because we need linebacker help right now. But I'll get off. That's another story.
Hey, I don't want to hear it, man. You're not as bad as my Panthers right now.
We're all struggling with our pro teams right now.
it's awful.
Yeah, man. But anyways, but that's kind of so that's what 4 or 5 I just named off the top of my head. So I think there's a lot of good talent on this team, and like I said, we've seen over the last several years a lot of Tennessee talent, that was underutilized, in college is now, all world stars in the NFL, and it's good to see that, but also you kind of kick yourself because like, man, we could have really utilized them a lot better.
Yeah, totally. How about you, David Dees? Any more
Yeah,
on there that
I think
David
Morrison
didn't mention?
did. No, I think he did a good job off the top of his head. The only ones I would add would be Darnell Wright on the offensive line. I think he's probably one that'll be drafted. And then I would also say I like Chase McGrath. I think the kicker, Chase McGrath, has an opportunity to kick in the NFL, but whether he's drafted or not, who knows? It's a tough road for kickers getting drafted, but maybe he could stick to a roster. And Ryan, you may have more. I think of Jacob Warren also. I doubt he gets drafted if he came out this year, but I think he could stick to a roster. I think he's talented enough. So those would be mine.
Cool. I think it's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned Chase. I think he actually could make it, man. He's a great kicker. Interesting. I like that. Yeah, you guys have already said everyone I'm trying to think of. I don't know. Ryan, do you have any more that these guys haven't mentioned?
Well, so a junior, and I don't think it's next year, but maybe the year after that. I think Spraggins has had a really good season along with Wright on the offensive line.
Oh yeah,
he reminds me a lot of almost like Tyler Smith, from a few years ago. But yeah, I would say him, and then the other one I would maybe say is down the road is Barron as well. I think he has the potential; he just hasn't hit his ceiling yet. But just size and speed wise, just a heck of a player.
I totally agree with that. Thank you, Ryan. What about some other guys? Kind of just to kind of keep an eye on, like all the ones you guys mentioned. I think are the tops for sure.
Yeah.
What about people like I don't know. What about Jabari Small? You think he's got a chance? What about
Yeah.
what about a Jalen Hyatt? What about
I think he has potential. I kind of wonder if his size, when he gets to the combine, some teams may be turned off by that. But maybe he can do well talent wise, and maybe put
what
up
about a Ramel Keaton?
Yes. Yeah. I
possibly.
think Ramel, his upside is so huge. I wish the kid was on the field more, and I'm glad he's been on the field more, not because of Tillman not being on the field, but it's been nice to see him out there. I think he
Yeah.
has huge upside.
I truly believe in Ramel. Like, I think he could really be dominant in the NFL. And I'll give you an example, guys. Alvin Kamara. Now, I understand he was with a terrible. Well, I'm not going to mention that coach's name. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to do that here, guys. We already know who this is. Anyways, but Alvin Kamara, good, decent guy, good at Tennessee, whatever, right? I kind of think of the same situation. Then all of a sudden, this guy gets picked up in the NFL, and he's one of the best in the league. I feel like a Ramel Keaton, like with the right, you know what I mean, with the right program, right team, and it's not just him. I think a lot of these guys, right? Like, man, I think they could be really good, man. So, anyways, that's why I say Ramel. I really think this guy's got a lot of talent.
What about Aaron
Um,
Beasley? We haven't mentioned him. I think
no
he.
question.
Yeah.
I think he's another one. Hey, I'm going to throw this out there. Do you think Princeton Fant would be good in NFL?
But he's
You
got a
think he could?
cousin, right? That's in the NFL, isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes. I think what we're getting at is here, without saying any other coaches' names, a lot of these players were so underutilized, underdeveloped, and they're just now kind of getting their shot over the last year and a half in a brand new system, and some of them are just
Amen.
starting to flourish.
Ryan, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's exactly right. They're just now, you said it best, man. And I think with what Heupel's doing with these guys, getting them ready, and they're finally starting to shine, and then you get them in the NFL, right, where it's at another level. Like some of these guys could really, and I'm not going to say could, some of these guys will be a huge name in the NFL, period.
Well, you look at last year, Matt Butler, who had him on the radar, and then a year with
Yeah.
Rodney Garner, and he just
Bingo.
draft stock just shoots way up and ends up getting picked. What do you go, third or fourth round, and he's already making a difference on the Raiders roster. So
Absolutely.
it's another name, but this staff just keeps getting guys out there and coaching them up, and it's been exciting to see.
That's awesome. Freddie, thank you for that question. That was I'm actually glad we talked about that. That was an awesome topic, and I think we had some good answers there from everyone on here. So thank you for the question, Freddie. Let's go to one more question real quick. We'll go to Amy R. from Smyrna, Tennessee. Where's that
Smyrna.
at, David D?
Smyrna.
Smyrna. What did I say? Smyrna.
Smyrna.
Where's that at?
It's around
have a club there.
Ryan Hughes' old stomping grounds. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just south of Nashville down towards Murfreesboro. So we got a club there.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, Amy, thanks for joining us. She asked, do you think you guys will do the podcast for basketball season? Okay. That's interesting.
Will you listen, Amy? If you'll listen, we'll do it.
For basketball season. Now, there's a lot more games.
I was talking, to our Vol Society crew. I need to do a pre-show for Vol Society Live for college basketball. So I'll say if there is an interest in doing Tennessee basketball for a podcast version, we will definitely do it. I mean, we love doing it for football. So if there is an interest, hey, I'm down for it. don't mind talking some Tennessee basketball. I like
Well, I'll say this. We had some people. The only reason we're doing this podcast, we had some fans say, "Guys, you got to get in on the podcast. Podcasts are like the thing. It's what's in. People love it. They listen when they work out. They listen when they're in the car going to work, and I had never for a long time listened to podcasts. And then I started listening to podcasts. I'm like, man, these things are fantastic. It's a great way to kill time, but also like you learn something as well. Um, so I finally said, all right, yeah, I think we have a market for this. I think we could really make this entertaining. And let's do it and see how a football season turns out. Here we are, just 5 or so episodes in, and like the feedback has been unreal. I actually can't believe it. We're doing really no marketing for this at all, and we're getting the analytics are unreal. We're getting people every day just listening to the show. So it's been awesome. And I got to tell you, if you guys like it, it's something we'll consider for sure. And I got to tell you, I'm very excited about the basketball season. I'm excited about, Tennessee athletics in general, under Danny White. And we've talked about this before. Leadership is everything. And when you get the right leaders in, everything else falls into place. And it starts with Chancellor Donde Plowman, who I love very much. Very, very, very smart person, and just all in at Tennessee. And then obviously President Randy Boyd, incredible person, great mind, and just these guys are always all in, they're all in, right? They're making the right decisions, and then you get Danny White in here who hires Josh Heupel, and it's not just football. I know we're talking about football only right now, guys, but our athletics in general it's unbelievable. All of our programs are unbelievable, including our basketball team. So I'm all for it. We'll definitely think about a really good show that we could do for that. And I'll only consider this though if Ron Hughes promises to come back and make a few appearances.
Absolutely. Well, hey, from one of your fans out there, myself, I think you guys should do it because I think the basketball season is also going to be electric as as you were just talking about. I'm super excited for our basketballs this year. And I think the team may be as talented as we've seen over the last few years, and that's saying a lot. Although it's somewhat unproven talent, I think they really have a super high ceiling.
You make a good point. You're right. I don't know really what to expect right now. It's unproven right now, but from what I hear and some of the players we have, I do believe this could be a really big year, and that is saying a lot because we've been pretty good over the past few years. So let's put it this way: I'm extremely excited to get this season started, and it's not far away. It's not far away, so I'm super excited about that. And so yeah, to answer your question, Amy, we will consider it, and we'll get back to you. Stay tuned, and we'll let you know what happens there. Awesome. Well, great questions, great mailbag section. I want to go to our final segment real quick before we say goodnight here. Final segment. We have LSU. We just came off a bye, as we talked about earlier. We have LSU coming up this Saturday. Thank God it's a 12 o'clock Eastern time game. That is in our favor. Let me tell you that right now, Vol fans. You don't want to play there 7, 8 o'clock at night. Not at that place. So this is great news for us, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So to finish this out, I want to get everyone's thoughts here on the upcoming LSU game. And I'll tell you what, to make it easy, I'll start, and then we'll just go down the line here and get everyone's take real quick. But for me personally, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think this game's going to be similar to that of the Pitt game leading up to it. And what I mean by that is it's going to be a close battle, and it's not going to be an easy one to win. I really believe that. I've been listening to a lot of the radio stations out there, especially Tony Basilio Network. I love that show. If you don't listen to that, it comes on daily. It's a great show. That guy tells it like it is, but he's had people, and he's getting frustrated. And this is the guy that doesn't care what anyone thinks. He's going to tell you his opinion. You like it, whatever. If you don't, he doesn't care. But fans are calling in. I heard today saying, "Oh, we're going to crush LSU." And this guy's like, "Really? You really think that's going to happen?" Like, okay. But I'm with Tony, man. Like, it's going to be a close battle. You can say what you want, but I really believe that this could be, in fact, I believe this 100%. This is going to be our toughest opponent so far this year. Florida was tough. Pitt was tough. But I'm going to tell you right now, this LSU team is no joke. All right? I can't stress that enough. And if we're going to win that game, in my opinion, we need our defense to show up and make some key turnovers and a few stops. Period. We all know the defense has been our weakness this year. And I'm not saying they need to come out and be perfect, because they're not going to do that. We have to be real with what our defense is right now, guys. But if we're going to win this game, and I think we can, defense has to show up and create at least a handful of stops, turnovers. That keeps us in the game. But regardless, I see this being a close one. We will certainly be playing the best team we've faced all year so far. And I'll tell you my score prediction here in just a second. But that's my take on this. Who wants to go next on this?
Yeah, just kind of looking at the stats here, just looking at LSU so far this year, everybody kind of goes back to that opener with Florida State, and everybody's talking about, oh, is Brian Kelly the guy? Is he the guy? The press conference right after that Florida State game was very awkward, but it seems like that's all just kind of water under the bridge at this point. They played very well so far. They picked up a nice win over Mississippi State, which is looking even better now. They had a bit of a trouble with Auburn on the road, but they handled everything nicely and they came out with a win. Just looking at their numbers so far, uh, they're averaging over 245 yards passing. They're rushing 196 on the ground, which our rushing defense has been very well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Brian Kelly and this LSU team will dial up on offense. Do they just let their quarterback Daniels just air raided out on our secondary, or do they try to run some sort of a balance? And like I said, Daniels is a very similar quarterback to Anthony Richardson. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's a transfer from Arizona State, over 900 yards passing so far. And matter of fact, he leads the team in rushing at 321. So, Tennessee's going to have to be ready. We've struggled with dual threat quarterbacks all season. Can this defense find a way to shut down one of the two big factors that Daniels throws? But
Yeah.
that's where I'm a little concerned with is our defense stopping Daniels.
Yep. Ryan Hughes.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Jaden Daniels, very similar, I think, to AR-15. I guess he doesn't go by that anymore, but since he plays for Florida, I can still call him that. But yeah, I think we're going to have to make the decision: are we going to bring the blitz and have the chance of him escaping the pocket and beating us with his feet, or are we going to spy and not be as exotic up front, and then that maybe gives him time? And Neighbors, who is their leading wide receiver, is a really good possession receiver. He gets a lot of contested balls, a really tough player. I think that's going to be key on the outside, particularly with Burrell, who I know has had challenges, but with him being out now, somebody truly has to step up. I think Haddon had his worst game of the year last week, even though he had an interception. I mean, just going back and rewatching that game, he was beat multiple times. Part of that was the coverage design. Part of that was just he got beat in general, playing too far off the ball. I think the other big key to the game is Ojulari. I mean, he's a freak athlete on the defensive end for LSU. Can we, through our protection, ensure that we keep Hendon upright? Or if they bring him, can he escape and keep getting that roughly 5 yards per carry when he runs the ball? And so I think that's going to be a huge key as well. I think, with not knowing if Tillman's going to play or not, I think it's day to day at this point. Does Keaton or somebody else really step up on the wide receiving core for us? So yeah, man, I think it's going to be a costly turnover that might be the deciding factor in the game. I like you, Brad, think it's going to be a very, very close game.
Awesome. David Dees, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you guys hit on a lot of the key points. I think uh, it's Tennessee's first true SEC road game of the year. This environment's going to be way different than Pittsburgh, way more animated and hostile. Even if it is at 11 a.m. local time, I think it's a tough atmosphere. I think Tennessee needs to repeat a similar performance on offense last week against Florida. If they can come out and play that same kind of up tempo style that we're used to seeing and have effectiveness against this LSU defense, I think we'll win the ball game. I think that's going to be the key: Tennessee's offense versus LSU's defense. I think LSU is going to score some points on us. Can Hendon Hooker continue to have success on the ground with his legs? Can he continue to limit turnovers? Can the offensive line hold up against a tough LSU pass rush? I think LSU's got the best athletes we faced this year. They're probably the third most talented SEC team, in my opinion, from top to bottom. When you just look at who they've brought in as recruits over the last 4 or 5 years, and I just think it's going to be a tough matchup. Their secondary is really interesting to me because that is made up mostly of transfer players. It's been plug and play, a lot of patchwork on the back end of the defense. What does that look like going against Tennessee? They had success against Mississippi State a few weeks ago, which was really surprising. They won that game 31-16. Mississippi State is a team that averages close to 350 passing yards a game. They're 11th in the nation in passing offense. In that game, they held Will Rogers and the Mississippi State offense to 214 passing, and they also forced an interception. That's a great game plan. They came out with that game. Let's see what their defensive coordinator has dialed up, and let's see if Tennessee's tempo can give them problems, because that's the great equalizer for this offense, right? Is to be able to play that fast, to be able to catch defenses, and you see every week Heupel has guys drawn up where they're running free, and it's either because of miscommunication because they were out of place, or he just dialed up the right play. But let's see how that works out this week. With if Tennessee can take advantage of the up tempo offense and really catch LSU off balance, they're going to have a lot of success. That's the great neutralizer for this team. So let's see what that looks like. I feel good about it, but this is definitely the toughest game to this point in the schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Let's end this show the right way. Let's get our score predictions, all right? And we're going to start first with our guest of the day, Ryan Hughes. What is your score prediction, sir, this Saturday?
Well, let's see. We've been averaging roughly 48 and a half. They've been averaging 35 and a half. I don't think it's going to be quite that high scoring a game because of LSU's really strong defense. And hopefully we can slow it down when we need to. I'm going to go Tennessee 31, LSU 27.
Wow. Okay. David Morrison, what is your prediction?
Yeah, that's something similar to what I was thinking with what Ryan brought up. I'll go Tennessee 30, LSU 28. 30-28 Tennessee.
Okay. Wow. And you have
It's going to be
Tennessee
another
winning,
nail
right?
biter, so make sure you got a lot of fingernails.
And that's Tennessee winning, right?
Tennessee winning, yes. 30-28, big orange.
Take your blood pressure medicine.
Yeah.
I already called the doc. Had him call in a double dose of BP meds for me. That way I can have the bod ready to go, baby. David Dees, are you also keeping it close to like these guys have predicted? Let's hear yours.
Gosh, this has been the hardest one for me to pick to this point in the year. I keep going back and
Amen.
forth on it. I think we're all hovering right there where we think it's going to be. I'm going to go Tennessee 34, LSU 31. Tennessee wins with a walk-off Chase McGrath field goal.
This is so funny. So, just so everyone listening knows, we have none of us have talked about our scores at all. I can promise you that. You just heard three guys just give their predictions, and my God, they're all so close. And you're about to hear the fourth guy give his, me, and it's right. I mean, it couldn't be any closer. I've got us at 35-31 Tennessee. Nail biter game. I think that's interesting. That's awesome. All four of us guys are right around the same. We kind of are envisioning the same thing happening here. So I think it's safe to say that, on this show, we think it's going to be a pretty close game. But we all four have Tennessee somehow pulling this one out. And I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, it's great to beat Florida in Knoxville because, we don't like Florida, right? It's our rival. I get it. And 4-0 is great, but I'm going to tell you right now, with what just happened this past week and teams that lost and won and all that good stuff, being 5-0 this week, means a lot. I'm going to tell you that right now. So if we can get to 5-0, guys, we're on to something. All right? And Ryan Hughes said it too. I believe he was talking about, Georgia and earlier and some of their struggles that they've had over the past few weeks. And there's something going on there, guys. I don't know what's happening, but to be the number one, well, they were the number one team in the country. Hey, they've been struggling. So, man, don't you love college football? This is why we love it. Anything can happen, man. Awesome. Well, guys, great show today. You heard our predictions here. We're going to find out come Saturday what happens. Hopefully the Vols will be victorious and we'll be 5-0. But I want to go ahead and give one quick shout out again to our guest today, Ryan Hughes. We thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. We know you're a busy person, so we thank you for taking the time to spend it with us. So I hope you had a good time here. It wasn't too boring for you, was it?
No, thank you guys. I mean, you guys are like brothers. We grew up together, back in the day. I know we've all went our separate ways, but just really appreciate you having me on, and go Vols.
Ryan, absolutely. Well, you're welcome on here anytime. And like I said, you're the invitation's already out there for a basketball season if we have a podcast. All right. So we hope to have you on more throughout the year and the coming years. But once again, guys, here we are. We're a few days away from going down to Baton Rouge to play these LSU Tigers. This has been another episode with Brad, David, and Ryan Hughes, our special guest, saying good night, go Vols, and let's beat the Tigers.